Fellow modelers, Bruce here. In this video we will continue looking at some scratch-built pieces of rolling stock that I had entered in the National Model Contest at the NMRA Convention here in Michigan in mid-July. In this case, the culprits are two little scratch-built cabooses that I made for my slate run railroad, and they're both HOn3, narrow gauge HO scale, quite different in their styling. The small one, anybody familiar with logging railroads of the West would recognize as being inspired by the West Side Lumber Company fleet of cabooses, and they had quite a number of eight-wheel cabooses that all differed from one another in terms of window placement in the sides of the caboose and end of the caboose and the placement of the cupola. Some of them were at the very end of the roof, and others were toward the rear but set in a bit, like this one. They varied also in how many windows were in the cupola, etc. So again, inspired by the West Side Lumber Company cabooses. The other one had another inspiration, which I'll show you in a little while, but basically was typical of cabooses that were built by the logging railroads themselves on old flat cars. This one would be a 26-foot flat car. And this little caboose, to put it in perspective, the cabin here is only about, or actually I should say the base is only about 16 feet. That small base gave me a couple of challenges. So let's talk about the little caboose first. What are the challenges? Well, first of all, to have enough room for the trucks to be placed underneath and to swing without hitting each other, you needed a set of shorter trucks. And in my case, Blackstone arch bar trucks fit the bill. And just to give you an idea of their comparative sizes, you can see that the trucks on this caboose, make sure I'm in the picture here, yeah I am, are shorter than the ones on the larger caboose. So that was one of the first things I had to do, was locate the proper trucks. The next thing is, when trying to fit the brake equipment on the underside, and I think you can see here the brake cylinder casting right here below my finger. The typical ones I had been using were plastic castings by Tichy and or Grantline, and they were too large to really fit under there, again without fouling the trucks and so forth. And so that's a brass casting that was either cal scale or precision scale. I can't definitively say which it is. So I had to look for some smaller brake equipment. Next, I realized that because it's so small, the number of details I could add to it were going to be limited. And in a judging situation or an evaluation situation, I needed to, do as much to counter that as I could. And the best way to do that is make almost all of your details scratch-built. And so, the grab irons, the handrails on the back and the front, the curved grabs, all of that handmade, coupler lift bar. I even soldered up, instead of using a commercial one, the vent pipe. Just anything I could scratch build, I did. And these caboose steps, which I'll show you a little bit more about. But instead of the typical, like on this flat car, instead of the typical kind of steps on that you would see there. This is a traditional caboose step that I had to solder together. So lots of challenges on this little guy, and windows and doors are all scratch built. So it's about as close to 100% scratch built, other than the trucks and the couplers, as you could possibly get. What else can I say about this little guy? Lettering is dry transfers, as on most of my scratch built structures. And the interesting thing, I guess, would be how I cut the window openings in the cupola. And I'm going to show you that now. It uses a technique that a lot of people who build styrene do when trying to make window openings. And that is to basically cut all of the siding up into little pieces, remove where the windows are going to be, and then glue everything back together. Often done in styrene, not as often done in wood. So I'll show you that now. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is superimpose on this white base a picture of how I laid out the windows on the side walls and end walls of the cupola. I'm going to do that now. Okay, next I'm going to show you how I now cut that apart. When you're trying to cut window openings with so little bit of wood remaining around them, you know the wood's going to split. So embrace that, control the split, make nice cuts, and then once you get all the parts separated, get rid of the plugs from where the windows were and glue everything back together. And that's what I did. This final picture shows everything glued back together, and now you can just assemble the walls of the cupola and move on. I use this a lot on things that, again, where window openings are going in and leaving very little wood around them, such as in clear story roofs, bay windows, and in this case, this cupola. Okay, moving on, let's look at some of the paperwork for the contest. Well, I ended up getting 113 points on this model, which is about typical of what I have received in the past. Again, I've never shown it at the national level, but I did have it evaluated at my division back in New Jersey and at a regional convention. I think it was the Mideast region. And you can see that one of the lower areas was detail, where I received 14 out of the 20 points. And again, there's just a limited amount of detail you can get on this little guy without getting ridiculous. I wasn't about to start stacking silly stuff on the platforms or anything. I could have made it with a removable roof and detailed the inside, but I was having enough challenges on this build and decided not to do that. Again, it was inspired by, and I used my old words, inspired by the Cabooses, 8-wheel Cabooses of West Side Lumber Company. This is one example, one right in front of it that's different yet. And down in the red on the bottom, I highlight so that they can see it. My rendition is based on the dimensions and 8-wheel arrangement of the West Side Cabooses, but is not intended to represent any particular one of them. I show how I start, and I do this with pretty much all of my pieces of rolling stock, is start by building basically a flat car. So there's the framing for underneath, and you can see it's just to the outer edge, 16 feet 4 inches. And here I just make it kind of right in place. I'm adding the brake detail here. I think you can see that. And I always, once I got the couplers on, put it on the tracks and make sure that the couplers are lining up where they're supposed to be. Now I'm showing some of the sketches I made for the walls of the caboose, side walls there, and I framed them out in 2x4s and then added strip wood on it, so you get some extra points for doing a board by board, or board on board I should say, construction. My list of details, very few commercial and a lot of scratch built. Door handles, the caboose steps, I'll show you how I did that. The curved and straight grab irons, coupler lift bars, doors and windows out of strip wood, the roof vent, brass tubing that I soldered, the railings, etc. What I did was made a little wooden jig where I could put the step and the supports, the straps, and then solder them. And then after I removed them from the jig, I could bend the straps 90 degrees to the step itself. Here's my picture of soldering together the roof vent. Again, extra points instead of using a commercial one. How I made my curved grab irons. So there, you get the idea. This is the grading sheet and so forth, and you know, it is what it is, but very satisfied with the score, excuse me, and this little guy did quite well. Alrighty, now let's turn our attention to the larger event. I think I mentioned before, this is somewhat typical of cabooses made in the back shops of the logging railroads, you know, starting with a 26-foot flat car, just adding a cabin onto it. And because these things were used to not only bring people up into the woods, but also some equipment, you know, it looks like a work caboose. Now, what inspired that? Well, what inspired that was a picture in this book, The Ghost Towns of Central Pennsylvania. And those ghost towns were towns that grew up around the logging. And in there was this picture of this caboose. And it's this picture that inspired my construction of this particular caboose. And I included that picture when it came to conformity. So that they know that such cabooses did exist in the wild, so to speak. Again, I could have made this with a removable roof. This one would have been a lot easier, but I thought there was going to be plenty of other stuff here that would bring the scores up. Again, you start with building the underframe and basically a flat car. There's some brake equipment, had more room there. Then drew plans and built the cabin, scratch built the windows and doors. Yeah, so how did this guy do? Well, let's take a look at the paperwork. This is actually one of the higher scores I've ever received on any model. Don't forget the total that you can get. The highest total is 125. This earned 119. And the fact that it did not take first place in the caboose category shows you that there was some decent competition there. Besides my two guys, there were several other cabooses, and one of them had a score higher than 119. So congrats to that modeler. Let's see, just to give you an idea again of some of this paperwork. Here's my plans for the underframe and building the underframe up from right on top of those plans. And that's what it looked like after I installed the brake equipment. Getting ready now to put the decking on. Here's my sketches for the cabin. And so you include all of that, with your documentation. Mostly pictures, very little verbiage. And again, framing out So I did instead of using scribe siding, I did board on board, list of commercial details and scratch built, and how I made certain things, and talk about my ladder jig that I made the wooden ladders, and that's basically it. So again, 2 scratch-built cabooses, both earning a merit award, and I got lots of nice compliments on the workmanship on these. So even though they're tiny, and I got to tell you, I mean, I procrastinated on building any rolling stock for so long it was silly, and I guess what. You just got to convince yourself. First of all, you're building a flat car, which is pretty straightforward. And then secondly, you're building a little house to go on top of it. So if you already have been building lots of structures, this is really nothing different. The big difference is the detailing on the underside, the brake detailing, and in this case, the truss rods and queen posts and so forth. So yeah, you just have to finally bite the bullet and do one, and once you've done one, the rest of them flow from there. So that's it for the second video on the pieces of scratch-built rolling stock that I brought to the National Convention. Next week I'll show you a gondola that also did quite well. So until then, continue modeling, and as always, if you've not already done so, please subscribe to my channel, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Talk to you again soon.